The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. This episode is sponsored by TheOp, also known as USAopoly.
The Dice Tower, episode 721, Jigsaw or Nah?
Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them.
In today's show, Mandy talks about some pretty big games. I continue my cooperative evolution, and we're going to serve up a game pie full of old American West games. I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Mandy Hutchinson.
Welcome back, everybody. It's lovely to be here with you again for another fine episode of the Dice Tower podcast. Mandy, you and I got to play... Well, for those of you who don't know, Mandy and I actually, considering that we live in two totally different countries on two totally separate coasts of a continent, we actually play games a lot together.
Right, especially...
And with our friend Ashley, too.
As of late, yes.
One game that we managed to just finish up together, and it took us a while. The Adventure Games Volcanic Island Edition.
Indeed.
Now, this is from Cosmos Games, and I don't know, man, I think there were 4 separate chapters.
Was it 4? I thought it was... I thought it was
it's hard
3.
to remember.
I'm trying to remember, because it was like we'd played it over so many... I thought it was 3, but maybe it is 4. I'm probably wrong. It probably is 4.
But when did we first play this game? That's what I want to know. We got to look at it. Oh my gosh, Mandy, we first played our first session of it in December of 2020.
Oh my God.
And we just finished it a week ago. Wow. Now, that's not a comment on the game. That's a comment of us making time to fit it in in our gameplay thing. But I'm glad we did. For those of you who aren't familiar with the adventure game series, this is kind of a narrative cooperative experience where it's all card-based, and you get map cards, and you get item cards, and you get a book full of different narrative blurbs. And ultimately, you are moving your characters around the map cards, discovering new things, trying to solve puzzles. It really feels like a point-and-click adventure in a board game. At least that's how it feels to me, Mandy. How about you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just feel like, I feel the story was really good. You know, as you're getting into it, that was the part for me that I was feeling, you know, and lots of voices happening, reading the stories out loud, like, I'm this person, nefarious things are happening. Oh, but no, heaven forbid something bad happens. Sorry, that's how my voice kind of changed when we were playing.
Actually, that's very, very true. No, it is totally the kind of game you kind of get into that way. And now I've played a couple of the other adventure games, and I gotta say that I think Volcanic Island is actually my favorite of the ones I've played. But, and no spoilers, folks. That's, you know, we're just chit-chatting about it because it is the kind of thing we don't want to spoil anything. Boy, oh boy, that last chapter took an unexpected turn for me in the story, you know?
I would say skills that I thought would be useful were not so useful. It was interesting. Let's go with that. I'm trying not to give anything away, but yes, just took a left turn. Yeah.
Yeah, tonally, for the first 3 chapters, you kind of feel like you're in one setting and one kind of archetype of a story. And then in that 4th chapter, it made sense. Like, there's a narrative branch to it. It's not like it just jumps. But all of a sudden, you feel like you're in a different type of archetype of a story, and it was a little jarring. And I remember we were talking about and laughing about while we were playing, but I was really pleased with the experience overall. And one of the things about adventure games that I find so interesting is the unexplored path. And that's what I like about a lot of games. Even Clank Legacy was like this for me, Mandy, where you always wonder, if I just made a different decision in this one point, what would have happened?
Right.
And I kind of feel that way with Volcanic Island. I'm kind of like, ooh, what if we had just done this other thing instead?
Right. Exactly.
Interesting.
It's kind of like pizza. You know, you have your delicious pizza and then you throw pineapple on it. Like, it's fine. I mean, I'm not a fan of pineapple, but I get it. And it kind of jazzes it up a little bit. That could be a thing. Maybe. I don't know. I did like it, though. So I don't want to throw you off by talking about the pineapple and the pizza. I'm just saying it just was like, surprise, it does kind of go on pizza, but,
Well, that's an interesting analogy, Mandy, because I am all about the pineapple on the pizza. Oh, yeah.
Hey, see?
Oh, heck yeah, people. I am. So, see, Mandy, maybe that's a great analogy because I'm all about that pineapple and you're maybe not so much. And maybe that's how we experienced that final chapter. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
I like it.
I was really glad we got to play it together.
Yes.
And
that
for
helped.
what it's worth, we did play it from 3 separate locations using kind of a webcam rig up and kind of simultaneously play. Now, we all did have our own copies of the game so we could follow along, but Mandy, you really ran the game for all intents and purposes with your overhead camera kind of showing the cards and the layout to keep us in sync.
But we all had a role.
Really well.
We had a role. I was the mover and shaker here with the camera. You
always are the mover and shaker.
I mean, you and Ashley both took notes, but Ashley was more like she took the photographic evidence, so we had it ready to set up for the next round and some notes, but then you had some other notes that could kind of fill in what we had missed. So I feel like everybody had their role and it worked well. I'm here for it. I enjoyed it. I mean, for me, I have a couple of adventure games. I don't play solo, so I know that you and Ashley probably get through them a bit faster than I do, but I really did enjoy it as a group experience.
Oh, I had a blast playing with a group. And if you have a play group like that or a set of friends that enjoys a narrative game like this, definitely for fun. I think the only other tip I will give folks, if you're going to try this one on your own, and this is not a spoiler, you get to the end of, I forget which chapter, but you get to an end of a chapter and the book does tell you they recommend that you don't take a break, that you just continue on and do the next chapter of the game. We did not listen because it was late and we were tired and we're like, no, let's pack it up. And then we went back and when we loaded up the next chapter, we all said, oh yeah, we should have just continued on.
I was like, I'm all confused what's happening.
When the book tells you, just push on through, I endorse that statement.
Exactly.
But thank you for playing Volcanic Island. I'm glad we finally wrapped it up, Mandy. That was a great experience.
Yes, very much enjoyed it.
Before we talk about other games that we've been playing, we got an episode poll to catch up on. Last episode's poll was all about digital influence with even what we were just talking about, Mandy, playing remotely, with all of the online services available to us now, which are amazing. We wanted to know if playing a game digitally has influenced you to buy the physical version. And thanks to everybody who voted in our Board Game Geek poll. It was great to see those results. And really, more than 50% of us have said, yes, we've been influenced by digital. Now, 15% of us said a lot. But most of us said, about 50% of us said, 1 or 2. And I think that makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. But hey, 27% of voters said no, they have not been an influence. And then, as kind of expected, 10% of us said no, we just don't play digital board games at all, which, fair. I can understand that perspective. It was interesting to see the dialogue. Really appreciate everybody who put comments in because, Mandy, a lot of people were saying things like it was the other way, where they had a physical game, but they wanted to keep on playing it and they couldn't, so they would go out and buy the digital version. So they were glad that the digital version existed so they could kind of continue exploring the game that way. And some people talked about app burnout and how you can play a game in app version so easily that it can kind of make you tired of the game. And then you've got this physical copy and you're like, well, I'm kind of done with it.
Right.
Which is a bummer.
Yeah, I think so.
But I think it's pretty clear. And, folks, let's be honest. I think this kind of information, even though it's purely anecdotal, is really interesting for publishers and really interesting to app developers to know, is this a symbiotic relationship in some way or not? In fact, Mandy, I guess what we should do sometime is run a poll that says, does having a digital edition of a game prevent you or stop you from buying an analog version? I think there were a couple of comments in the thread that kind of alluded to that, but I wonder how significant that would be. There are some games that were mentioned that digitally it's a little smoother than physical.
Well, because then you
Which
don't
is-
have to move stuff around, you know?
Exactly. And I think some of the Dice Tower fam were saying that. So thanks everybody who voted in that poll. I like this one. This was really compelling from an informational kind of data almost point of view. So thanks for that.
Just quickly, because I don't think I've mentioned it before, my thoughts on it a little bit. I don't know. I'm weird. I have some games only in app form. Only in app form. I don't think I will, and it's not because it's a bad game. I just don't think I'd play it enough as a physical copy because I have so many games. Do you know what I mean? And then I have some games that I would just don't like. I was like, oh, I don't care for this game at the physical copy, but I'm like, the app's great. Maybe it's a whole like non-committal thing. I don't know. It's a thing that I have. I'm thinking that's probably what it is. And then there are some games that I love so much that I have the app, I have the game, and I just play the heck out of both of them. Do you know what I mean? So I think it could be situational. I don't know if anybody's like me. My brain is all over the place, but that's kind of my sum up on it.
I think that's probably highly relatable in a lot of ways, Mandy, for sure.
Yeah.
So thanks everybody for those votes and comments. This week's episode poll is Jigsaw or nah? And basically, we noticed there is a seemingly huge overlap between board games and jigsaw puzzles and whether people consider themselves quote unquote puzzlers or not. And we want to know, hey, do you consider jigsaw puzzles one of your hobbies along with board games or not? Real simple. Let's see how many of y'all out there are piecing together the wonderful adventure Jigsaw. Now, Mandy, I know you do puzzles, but you have kind of parameters you like to work within.
Oh, for sure. And I don't want to sway anyone's vote, but yeah, like I'm a bit particular about types and shapes and size. And I'm weird. So we'll talk about it more when we get the results, but I do want to do a little rewind. I think this title needs to be a little more jazzy.
Okay, bring
Should
it.
be like, we need to get some like scratching like of records. Chicka chicka jigsaw. Chicka. Oh no.
Okay.
I don't know. I just feel that had a bit more jazz to it.
It's the kind of jazz, Mandy, that truly only you could bring to the moment.
I can hear the audience cringing right now, like, oh, Mandy.
No, that was amazing. Clearly that's something only you, between the two of us, that's something only you could pull off. Oh my goodness.
So normally this is around the time I do a little butterfly talk, but it's been a little busy week for me, so I do want to make sure I get them right. So next episode, I do have a few more in the email that I will share with all of you. It gives me a bit more time to practice.
I will await with bated breath for the next round.
Fabulous.
All right. In the meantime, we got plenty of games to chat about, so let's get to it.
So, what have you been playing lately?
Okay, everyone. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. And I just can't hide it. Okay, there's a reason I had to sing that. I had gone recently for a game night. Yes! Not even game night. Game day.
What?
Game
What?
day. I didn't get home till 2
Amazing.
in the morning. It was so amazing. So
Nice.
it just feels so good to play those heavy games in person and just feel the pieces and, oh, it's glorious. Okay, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. So let's talk about a game. That's the whole point. The first one on the list is Merv, The Heart of the Silk Road. And I've played this with Suzanne and Ashley. I've played it with my friend David. I now have played it with my friends Tracy and Stefan. So thanks again for walking me through that again. I mean, actually, I was walking them through it, but it was great. And it's designed by Fabio Lopiano. Art is by Ian O'Toole, and it's published by Osprey Games. It retails for about $72 Canadian. It plays 1 to 4 players in about 90 minutes. So, the whole point of Merv is that you're trying to amass power and wealth in the prosperous heart of the Silk Road. Sounds easy, sounds interesting enough. First time looking at this game, I was like, oh my goodness, there are only 3 rounds? What? So, in the game, yeah, right? Like you look at the board and you have different areas of the board where you can take different types of actions. And sure, those are kind of like where you'll be doing things, but most of the action kind of happens in the center of the board. And this is where we'll have some tiles laid out. We don't have player boards per se, but you will acquire cards and things like that in the game. So in the middle of the board, You have tiles laid out in kind of a grid, and around it, there are spaces around this square. And each turn, you're going to move, let's say at the top of the board, let's say I'm going to go first and I'll pick a spot. And then there'll be a column of tiles there. And I get to choose one of them that I'm going to action. I get to place my little house on it. I get the resource because they all have a picture or icon of a resource that you can get in their colored cubes. And then whatever tile that you decided to kind of activate, you're going to do that action. And there are a variety of actions. You can go to the market to get common and rare resources. You can go to the mosque, which is my favorite one, and you get to kind of go up this tree, and you have to pay to kind of go up these steps, but that also gives you points or gives you favor, other kind of tracks that you want to progress in the game. That's the favor track that I mentioned. That's at the bottom of the board, and this is where you can get lots of points, right? If you can get your people in certain houses, you can get certain points for different types of things in the games, like scrolls or spice cards, so putting more meeples in there are going to get you more points, but you also have to be able to kind of, I guess, pay your people that are in there doing that hard work. And if you can't, then you can't score those points because there are scoring rounds. We'll get to that in a moment. We have the kind of spice area. I can't say this word. Caravansary? Oh man, I don't know why I have such a hard time with that word. Suzanne's face right now, like, what?
I honestly did not know that is what it's called, and I also would struggle with that word, so no judgment here.
So, merci beaucoup, Stefan, because my friend Stefan is like, this is how you say it. I'm like, I didn't know this, so I learned something new. But this little area is where you can collect cards for spices, and I think Suzanne kind of took this approach because getting groupings of different types of spice cards was some really good points for end of the game. You also had an influence track, which was really good at helping you get those different types of spice cards. You can't get different spice cards if you're not at a certain level on that influence track. So I'm kind of throwing a lot of things at you here, but those are just, some of the actions that you can do.
There's a lot in this
Building
game.
Walls, that was a big one. How could I forget that one? Because building walls is great. You can help out other people. You build a wall, you're like, I'm protecting my houses right in the middle of that board I was telling you about. But you could also protect other people, but you get more influence for protecting other people's areas. So, just little things like that where you had that push and pull of, you're protecting them, but you're getting points. And they're like, hey, you're protecting me. Woo! But then they're not getting those points or influence points. So things like that really cool. So it only has 3 rounds. And the first round, you're going to do a bit of scoring. So you're going to count some houses that you have in the middle there. If you have any tiles from that mosque track I was telling you about, you would action those points. You're also going to look down in kind of that area where I was telling you, you want to get your people to multiply those points for scrolls or for spice cards and things like that. In the second one, we end up doing an invasion. So guess what? If your little house is in the middle of the board, they're not protected by walls or soldiers. Bye! They're gone. And someone can swoop in.
Happened to you.
Right? Can swoop in and get that tile because you can put modifiers on that tile and someone can be like, oh, that tile looks great. I'm going to come and do that next round. So a lot of tricky things like that. And those happen in the last 2 rounds. So 3 rounds. At the end of those 3 rounds, you do your scoring at the end, and then anything at the end would be your cards. Those are the spice cards that you're going to take a look at, and those are going to add onto your points. Yeah. So that was a lot, but that is Merv, the Heart of Silk Road. And I have to tell you, I really liked it. I wasn't sure going in how I was going to feel about it. I'm like, I don't know. It's getting a lot of hype, We'll see how it is. And I'm like, no, it was well-deserved. And I didn't think I would get through so much in 3 rounds. The first round I found went really fast.
Right.
Second round kind of went a little bit faster, but then you start to realize, oh, maybe I need to build those walls there. That's a bit of an issue. So you kind of do a little go team effort, and then you're like, no, this team stuff needs to stop in this 3rd round. So I definitely felt that vibe in all the games I've played, and definitely we put up walls faster in some games than others, but then you see the result of that. Ashley, I don't know why you kept paying for those houses and not putting up those walls, girl, because that was wild. But I think, didn't she end up winning? It's just, there's so many ways that you could win the game, which I also liked. Now, I still haven't quite found my strategy because apparently I suck at this game because I haven't won at all. But you definitely need to have some focus on that bottom area, I find, of the board. The scoring, where you put your people in there to get multiple points and scoring certain things. And if you ignore that, I feel like that might be a bit of an issue for you, but that just means you have to go hard on something else. So I thought the length of the game was actually good. It can run long, especially in that 3rd round, because now you really have to be like, you only have 1, 2, 3, 4 turns, right? Because you only get 1 turn per side of that square, and actioning, something in a row or column, it's not a lot. So you really have to think about what you're doing and how much you're helping other people. I don't want to say the game is fiddly. It's not fiddly, but there are a lot of kind of like little rules to remember. So how do I explain this? And you might be able to explain it a bit better, Suzanne, from what I'm trying to say. The rule set is not difficult, and the rule book is actually put together quite well. But there are just like a lot of little things that you have to remember. So when you play the game, you're like, oh, this is great. I go here, I do this.
It's intricate. Yeah, for sure.
Do you know what I mean? So there's some like little kind of things that you have to remember because it can, affect it if you don't do those things. And I found, my second game was like, oh, yeah, that's something we didn't do. And then in my third game, oh, you know what? I think I got it all, but maybe that was that little thing that I didn't do. So just little things that you have to remember. But other than that, I really, really enjoyed this game. Oh, it's so nice to play a game that's just thinky and wonderful. Merv, the Heart of Silk Road. I know, Suzanne, what are your thoughts?
Well, I've only played it the once, and I was really excited to play it again, but then my game night kind of fell apart, and we didn't actually end up being able to get together, so I was bummed. I'm really looking forward to playing it again. I was instantly interested in Merv when I saw Fabio was the designer, because I am still in love with Kalimala, his first published game. Specifically, the creative and innovative worker placement action selection mechanism that he built with this grid and the stacking discs. So clever, such a great mechanism, and that kind of made me a permanent fan. So I've played Kalimala, Ragusa, and now Merv, and all of his published games that I know of. And I will say, I think I am betting this is going to be my favorite of his games. Okay. I really enjoyed my first play of it. I cannot wait to explore more. Definitely a few things that, as we were talking about, intricate, a couple of small details that I missed that I wish I had been more cognizant of as I was playing. No big deal, right? Because that's just, first game is a mess. That's just the way, especially games with a little more complexity like Merv.
Exactly.
But yeah, I'm a fan. I think that Fabio demonstrates an ongoing ability to bring something fresh to a game mechanically, something interesting. And even just the way that you work around the 4 sides of the grid, and each of the 4 sides is where you take an action, and how you use the grid to try to maximize on that. Very clever, simple, but it really adds up. The sum is more than the parts for sure in this one. So I'm really glad I got to play with you and Ashley, and I'm really looking forward to playing it more.
Absolutely. All right, so that was Merv, the Heart of the Silk Road.
First up for me, I don't really want to participate in the is it a game or not discussion.
No, here
I'm just going to put that out there here. But I played Mazescape the Ariadne edition.
Okay.
This is published by BGG and the designers are Pablo Cespedes, Victor Hugo Cisternas, and the art and graphic design, which you really have to recognize in this kind of game, is from Joan Gardier and Alex Santalo. And Mazescape Ariadne is a solo play game. It's in a small little box with a magnetic flap, and when you open this thing up, you've got a stack of what feels like maps. And I think there's 7 or 8 contained individual folded paper maps. And a little stick. That's what you get. Or a stylus. I think calling it a stick sounds diminutive, like it's a stylus.
Right.
And this is a printed maze, and it's folded like a map. So you just open it up, and there's a compass rose, and then there's this impossible triangle. And ultimately, all you're trying to do is draw a path from the rose to end up at the impossible triangle. But what you're going to find is you're going to go and like, oh, wait, this is a dead end. Well, that's because it's going to evolve using the paper folds as you go. So you're going to use your stylus, and then you can open the flaps of the paper. And you'll find as you go through this series of maps or mazes that they're cut differently. So that the way that they open up and the way that you can close and open sections is actually different, and it evolves from map to map or maze to maze. And that was a surprise to me, as I'm going along. I don't think that's a spoiler, but it's a feature that I found really compelling as you're going through this. So technically, you just follow your stylus along a line. You are not supposed to lift it up from the paper. You can open a flap that may open a new avenue, then you move your stylus, and then maybe you close the flap over the page that you were just on. And this map can open up to this huge thing. You're going to have wonky different shapes of paper as you're closing and opening sections. Each map may have some special kind of goal on it, like you have to reach 5 different vases, or to get through a gate, you have to connect to the key before you can go through the matching gate. That kind of thing. I really like this. It's just a fun experience. You play it on tabletop, you lay it down. The first one is going to be perhaps a little deceptive, because it's pretty straightforward. It still had some interesting moments in it. They get harder. They get much harder as you go, at least in my personal experience. Maybe I'm just very bad at mazes. But if you are the kind of player that enjoys mazes, I mean, if you're you're at the restaurant and they give you the kiddie menu and you've got the little mazes and you just fill them in naturally anyway because it's fun, definitely check out Mazescape, that levels up a simple pathing maze. Not simple. I mean, it just takes it to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Graphically, it's very, very clean. It almost has an aesthetic of a video game to it. It's very clean. It's stylized, and it's so critical that it's clear. Right? Because there's overpasses and there's steps that you can go up and ladders you can climb up and down. Like, it's very, very critical that the graphic design is very clear in here.
Right.
And I think they found a beautiful balance between lovely aesthetics and functional gameplay. So kudos to the artist and graphic designer on that for sure. The maze design is incredibly clever. I love the folding and the unfolding and trying to figure out what works and get trapped in a corner, or you can see the key over there, but you have no idea how to get there. And this is a great experience. I just really like it. Is it going to be for everybody? Obviously not. But if you're a solo gamer, if you like mazes, if you like puzzles, like even as we're talking about jigsaw puzzles, this feels like something that if you're a jigsaw puzzle fan, check this one out. Now, I've played I think 6 of the maps in Ariadne. There's a second edition too. There's actually 2 editions out they're different. And I've already put that one on order because this one's a real winner for me. I really enjoyed it. That's Mazescape Ariadne.
Yeah, this is sounding kind of fun, actually. And you know what? Even if it's an activity and you're enjoying it, it could be your own game in your mind, and that is okay. But now I really want to try it because it's something a little different. I've never heard of it, so thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Sure, and it is solo only. There's no reason why you couldn't sit with a friend or a partner or a kid and just kind of work through it collectively as you kind of make decisions and point to things and things like that.
Absolutely. All right, so I've sandwiched a lighter game between the heavy ones I have for you today. So the next one I'm going to talk about is Match 5. So this is designed by Carl Briere. Art is by Silly Jelly, and it's published by Synopsis Games. That is a great name, by the way, for the artist. It retails for about $30 Canadian, and it plays 2 to 8 players in about 20 minutes. So I guess this would be classified as a kind of a lightweight or party-ish type game. And in the game, players are trying to find a common link between 2 icons, and you have to use your imagination to find kind of your answers to them, different combinations of them, in 3 minutes. So that's literally the game. So you have a whole bunch of boards that you get, different colors, and you have dice that are in the game as well, and the dice have different icons. When you roll the dice, you're going to have kind of one of each colored board, so there's like a purple, a yellow, a blue, a white, etc. And when you roll the dice, you're going to put each die in the corresponding slot that matches. And those are the words that you're going to be using, because the sheet that you're using gives you pictures on each line of 2 dice. So it might have the blue and the white. So that means the die that's on the white board and the die that's on the blue board, you have to make up some kind of phrase or word with those 2 words that you're seeing on the board. And you can be a little silly with it, or, they give some really fun examples. So, I think they had one that was like, I can't even remember the example off the top of my head, something about the answer ended up being Adam's apple that the person gave, but the combination of words wasn't necessarily, it was like fruit and I can't even think of something fantasy or something like this, or something physical, like of the body. I think it was like fruit and body part or something like that. So, and then the person says Adam's apple, like that would be their answer. So you can be a little silly with it like that. So, we play a few rounds of that. Actually, I think it's only the 2 rounds you play. And then you get points after based on if people think, oh, that's a good answer, like it's a not so good answer. And then if you've had matching answers, you can get points that way as well. So that's it. Okay. I don't know how to. This is one of the. When there's a game that you really want to like, but
Sure.
didn't? This would be one of those games. I am not saying it is a bad game. It did not go over well the few times that I played it. So I did play it with a larger group. I thought, okay, that might be good. Get some fun answers. It did fall a little flat with the group, and I don't know if it just people weren't like super creative with the answers, maybe just weren't comfortable. It just didn't give people that open feeling I was hoping it would. I played it with a smaller number. I know Ashley and I played it. I don't think you and I played it, Suzanne, but I did play it.
I've played it with you.
You did? Okay, sorry. So I did. Okay,
Yes,
so I played it with you.
play it, yep.
And then I played it with Ashley. So I played it at the 2-player count, 3-player count, 8-player count. And I still felt at all player counts, it still felt a little flat. And even with us playing as friends, I mean, it's fine. Like, we're going to make any game fun, really, because it's us. But I feel like, there was a bit more of a push to do that. So I applaud the kind of creativity behind it. I feel like this is a game where you would need to have a story element for me to find this a little bit more exciting, which would then maybe draw it out of a party game category, right? Then maybe it won't be in that category. I just feel like if you don't have people who are super creative, it's a timed game, right? Not everybody works well under pressure. That combination didn't really work well. Like, it wasn't like a story cube idea where you're creating a story behind it. It's just snapshot words.
Right.
And I feel if you don't have like-minded people, or at least people who are snappy with their answers, and it could be so different, it's fun. I just feel like it won't be very enjoyable. So that's match 5 for me. So overall, not for me. Maybe your group might find it, but I actually would house rule it where you have to kind of give a story. I feel that would kind of jazz it up a little.
Fair enough. Well, I mentioned at the very, very top of the show that I'm on a journey, Mandy.
Oh, okay.
I have long said that I am not a fan, generally, of cooperative games.
Right.
And in the past, the cooperative games I would call out as games that I do enjoy are things like the exit games, or Concept, or Mysterium. Those have been the kinds of games that, although they're cooperative, I've typically enjoyed. Games that are cooperative that I haven't enjoyed are things like Eldritch Horror, or, I hate saying this out loud, but Hanabi. And I know that these are really, really popular games with so many folks, but they just didn't click for me.
Right.
That said, something has happened, and I don't know what that something is, but I have discovered that of late, I am more and more into cooperative games. The game I'm about to talk about continues that journey, and it could be for a few reasons. So, Gargoyles Awakening.
Oh, I love Gargoyles. I'm so excited to hear about this.
Gargoyles Awakening is a board game from Ravensburger that's cooperative, for the most part, based on the Gargoyles cartoon.
Amazing.
If you have not watched the Gargoyles cartoon, it is live streaming on Disney Plus if you have access to that service, and it is worth a watch. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, this was a very stylish cartoon, kind of in that Batman, Dark Knight kind of tone. Like there was like this era of animation, and Gargoyles fit in there. It was a little gritty. So basically, Gargoyles transported from the ancient past into modern day New York, and they end up fighting crime and, trying to figure out how they were ensorcelled to end up there and things like that. And it's this team of actual gargoyles. And one of the things is that during the day, they turn to stone and they are guarding the buildings, and they're stone gargoyles. At night, the stone gargoyles come alive and protect the city. And it was just such a good show. And there was the comic relief gargoyle and the strong, deep-voiced gargoyle and there's a gargoyle dog. It's the most amazing show, and I'm a huge fan of it. So, of course, I was going to be excited about a board game. Gargoyles Awakening is designed by Nate Heiss, and it's going to retail for $30. So, pretty affordable. Now, I said it's mostly cooperative. So what this game has is it has 4 setups or 4 scenarios, which is interesting because arguably they could release more scenarios and expand the game pretty easily. But one of the scenarios is a 1v mini where one player controls the evil team, right? So that I thought that was a cool addition too. So 3 cooperative scenarios and 1v mini. Now, I've played 2 of the cooperative scenarios and that's all I've played at this point. So I'm kind of talking about it from that perspective for what it's worth. Gargoyles comes with a board. Each character, you get to pick which character you play, whether it's Brooklyn or Broadway or Goliath. And then you get a character placard and your own little personal deck of cards that will have your actions on it. There are dice for battle and claw marks mean strikes and that kind of thing. There are amazing miniatures for the main characters, for the heroes. Now, the villains are either cardboard standees or tokens on the board. Some people will not care for that. Didn't bother me at all. And you get cardboard terrain, which represent the buildings, because you're playing in a city. This was an urban setting. And so they've created all these 3D cardboard structures that you assemble, and they're skyscrapers that you place on the board in specific locations, and they do impact movement. It just has such a great table presence, and the look of the game just feels like Gargoyles, so it puts you right in that zone. Gameplay-wise, you get a scenario, you set it up specifically to that scenario, and then you go through your actions based on your cards. You're going to have a certain number of action points as a hero. You can use those to move. You can use those to attack, that kind of thing. If you're moving up a building, it costs you an extra action point. If you are on a building and moving off of it, you get access to the glide movement, which lets you move a little further. So some thematic ties and leveraging those buildings. And then as you go through the team, then it's the baddies' turn. Now, the baddies have a deck that they're drawing from, and it does get a little customized for each scenario, which is cool. And some of the cards have moons on them. And so you're going to be laying those out on the board as you do whatever the card says. But when the moon track gets full, then it becomes daytime. Well, daytime, the gargoyles are essentially helpless. And so that's when the villains do some really bad stuff, whether it's attacking you, gain extra movement, moving the disc back that you need to claim, all this other stuff. Then it resets and you keep on going. So you're going to keep on going until you either hit the victory condition or you lose as a team. Pretty straightforward. And for me, very enjoyable. And I thought that it was a good balance of bringing theme and setting into the game, but having a pretty fun cooperative experience. Like you put yourself, the mechanisms allowed you to put yourself into the game as that character. And as you're seeing Coldstone and Demona corner you, you're like, oh no, Broadway, you better get out of there, that kind of thing. And it was just a lot of fun. Now, I played kind of the basic early scenario, and then there's one that almost has like a pick up and deliver element to it, where you're trying to gather these discs and get them back to a certain building. Both of them worked well. It was interesting pacing-wise in the quote-unquote entry-level scenario. One of the things that the friends I was playing with, we commented on is that it felt tight. We did win, but right up into the end, we looked at the game and we're like, if this one thing had happened differently, we would have lost.
Right.
And a lot of people like that in a cooperative game, that tension, that kind of, you don't want it to be too easy thing. Now, when we played the other scenario with we lost bad. That was just, it was almost a short game. It was a very ugly short game because the bad guys kept on, at nighttime, they kept on like respawning. It was just so unfair, but it was a lot of fun.
Nice.
So obviously I really enjoy Gargoyles Awakening as a game. I've enjoyed the cooperative scenarios. I've not tried the 1v mini, but I think that it's cool that they included it. I will say the rule book was simple. It was a very thin rule book. It left a few little gaps. I could have used just a little more, like maybe one more layout, one more spread in that rule book to give me a few more answers. We worked through it. And then my single biggest complaint, the 3D terrain does not go back in the box assembled. You have to disassemble it every time. I get why. I wish it went back into the box assembled. Thankfully, I've had to pull them apart and put them together a couple times now. They seem to hold up well to that kind of treatment, but they do, each building has a lot of pieces to it. So kind of, if you're going to do it, make it a team effort. Give everybody the different buildings to assemble while you're getting set up, and just go for it, because certainly the table presence adds so much to it at the end of the game. So Gargoyles Awakening, I enjoy it, and it's a cooperative game.
Never thought I would hear Suzanne enjoy cooperative all happening, but the Gargoyles, I think that's what did it.
I'm wondering. I have to admit, I'm very, very into the theme, but I felt like it was a really solid game. And hey, I had fun. Isn't that what matters?
That is exactly what matters, and good choice. But that's a blast from the past, but I am here for it. So
now swinging in a very different direction. Right. Oh my goodness!
From blast to the past to, I don't even know. I thought I had a line, but
nice try, Mandy.
Couldn't do it. I'm sorry, everybody, couldn't do it. So I'm going to talk about the game Bonfire. Yeah, feel free to let me know if there was something I could have said a little better to make that happen. But
I get segue coaching.
Yeah, I'm like, oh y'all. Goodness.
Nice.
Bonfire is designed by my favorite, Stefan Feld. Art is by Dennis Lohausen, and it's published by Hull Games and I think also Pegasus Spiele. It retails for about $56 Canadian, and it plays 1 to 4 players in about 70 to 100 minutes. So another one that's a bit heavier on the list. So I'm going to be very honest with you. I didn't fully know what the game was about, like thematic-wise. So I'm like, let's do a little search, because even after playing, I'm like, I know we got to make bonfires, and there's, as my friends say, gnomes. Gnomes, everybody. We're just being silly. But yeah, so your group of gnomes living close to the cities where you also need to light these bonfires. Simple enough. You would think I would figure that out, but there you go. And I feel like they have like druid characters and stuff in there, so it fits that kind of fantasy type realm. So in Bonfire, this is definitely a Feldian game. Do you like that word, everybody? Feldian. And it definitely fits what you've seen before. In the game, every player has their own player board, and then you have a main board that you're going to work off of. And the board is actually fairly small, which was surprising. I don't know why I thought it was going to be bigger. And on your board, you have a place to hold your resources, and you also have a place that you can create paths. So it almost looks like a half of a moon, so like half of a circle. And you're trying to create these paths that go around, and then in the other direction, coming back the other way, you're trying to fill in the little holes between the path you're making and your board, because these are going to get you points when you get those druids into those kind of fire areas, and you're going to have tokens you can put there, which are kind of objectives that you can pick up in the water areas of the board to complete. And that's water area that I'm talking about is an area on the board. You have boats that you can travel on the board or travel around the board. And this is where you're going to pick up those objectives. And they're things like have X amount of tiles on your board. Oh, wait, did I forget to mention that we have Tetris-like shapes on the board? We do. Well, okay, we only have like the 4-length line, but that's not the point. You still have shapes to play around with.
Okay.
There's a part of the board where you have these, those long shapes that I was telling you about, and they have icons on them. And you can put them on the board, and putting them there gets you resources. And if you can have other ones that match symbols to the ones you've already placed, you get even more resources. So trying to build those up is really good. But for example, the objectives you could have on the board would be like fill in your board so you've covered the outside pieces of that kind of Tetris-like area that I was talking about. And that's an objective you can pick up. And that's one of the harder ones because they have different levels of these kind of objectives you can pick up. So you want to get those on the board. Remember, I was telling you about the path. You want to get your path done. And you also want to get those little blocks in so that when you're moving druids on your board, because you can get those from the board as well, pull them onto your board, you want to get them moved on the board and into those kind of slots where you've completed objectives, because it's going to give you even more points in addition to what is on the objectives. So that's just like one part of it. And then you have another part of the game. I know there's a lot going on here. I'm sorry. There's another part of the game where once you've completed objectives, you have these little, they're not druids. I can't remember what they are, but there's another kind of a component you have that you can place on the bigger board. And this gets you additional bonuses, right? And it could be getting more tiles out. It could be getting, being able to do another objective, things like that. So it's just another bonus that you want to do. And this board has other actions that you can take that help you get those tiles to put in your board, get you more resources. There are also cards you can get that score in-game or just have abilities that help you in-game as well. So remember the board I was telling you about where Once you've completed an objective, you put them out on that board. Once you have so many, I think it's 10, then a countdown of 5 rounds starts, and then so that 10 people on the board triggers the end of the game, and then you've got 5 rounds, equal number of turns, so 5 rounds to finish off everything. It gets pretty tight at the end. I was like, it's fine. I got lots of time. It starts off slow, and then it's like, zip, oh, wait, oh my goodness. What? I want to finish this objective because it takes a turn to flip an objective tile. So yeah, you might meet the conditions, but you have to take a turn to flip it. So what people do is they leave a lot of these objectives until like near the end, and then you just got to spend turns just flipping them over. Like, it's wild. I really liked this game. Oh, if you couldn't tell already. I have been waiting for like a fell that's just like, boop, blow my mind, fire. Poof, poof, poof. This is great. I mean, I like a lot of felled games, as you all know. But this was like reminiscent of some of the other games. Like, you had a feeling, I don't know if it's Luna I'm thinking of. Luna's not... Okay, I know.
Yeah, Luna, I've heard Bonfire compared to Luna, and honestly,
yes,
Luna is one that was a complete miss for me.
Right.
And, like, I got angry. I got so angry, I'm still angry about my experience in Luna. So that's why I was a little hesitant on Bonfire, to be honest.
Right.
But listening to you talk about it,
I think, like, some of the thematic elements, sure, it kind of has that, some of the placing out. But I find in this one, everybody has an opportunity to place. So if you place first on that major board, you might just get that extra figure. That they have these figures that have no color, because you can't have the same color in certain areas. That just lets you maybe take another ability again. So that's the bonus, but everybody has an opportunity to be there and get points. So it's not as, I don't want to say mean-spirited, but it's not as like, as Luna is. You have a chance. You have a fighting chance.
Got it.
Yeah. And then you get a feeling of that, like, Feast for Odin part of the board, right? Where you're working with the different shapes. Now, you just have the one shape, but you do cover things which get you resources. So a lighter version of that. But you definitely can feel that this is a Feld, and you have lots of things you can do. And they're all going to kind of lead you to a path of victory. And our scores were so close. Each of it was within like 2 or 3 of each other. Like, I think the range was like a total of 6 between first and last. And yes, I was last, okay, but I'm very proud of myself that the spread was very small. I definitely found, how I talked about Merv earlier? This game was smoother. I liked Merv a lot. I feel like this game was less, and I don't want to say complex, that's not the right word, but I feel like it wasn't like, okay, you have to remember to do this little thing before you do this little thing, and like, it was just this is what you do, this is what you get. This is what you do, this is what you get. Like, it was a smoother experience for me. I know, this is what you do, this is what you get.
I could put that on a loop.
This is what you get.
Let's put that as a background track on something nice.
Oh my goodness, I'll find every ways to make this a musical, everybody. So all that to say, like, both were excellent games, but I just found the play of this was a bit of a smoother ride, and I think people will feel that in the game. Like, you really started to get your groove early in the game, and I really liked that, even though it was a bit of a slow burn and then escalated, but you could really push yourself to do things and do it easily, even if you had just learned the game. So Bonfire, for me, I love it. Like, I really enjoy it. I'm looking forward to playing it some more. Maybe with Ashley and Suzanne, and maybe I could get a win, everybody. Just maybe. It's Bonfire.
I would love for you to teach.
So good.
Thank you. All right, to wrap up our games played. You didn't think you were going to make it through an episode without a rolling, right? Did you, folks? Come on now. Have you not listened to the podcast before? Get on board. Here we are with Castle Party. This is from Devere Games. The designers are Joseph Allouet and Eugenie Castagno, and the art is by L'Oreal. It is a card-based roll and write, so some people like to call it flip and write. And you are hosting a monster party. And so all of the pieces of art and all the cards are represented by, like, mummies and skeletons and pumpkin kings and witches and Frankensteins. But they went very cutesy, cartoony with the art, so everything is very adorable. So monster theme, but very family-friendly, very kid-friendly kind of aesthetic, very cute aesthetic. And in Castle Party, you're going to be filling up your little castle room or your party room with different monsters. And they're going to be represented by different shapes. So the vampires have a little jagged W shape, and the skeletons have a circle shape or things like that. The witches have a little triangle for like their witch hat. And so you're filling in these characters on your room to represent the monsters that you're putting into the party. The way you get to decide where they go is it's got this polyomino element to it. So there is a deck of shape cards, and then there's a deck of monster cards. And the shape card gets flipped over, and it's going to have some kind of polyomino on it. And this is a really interesting, unique part of the game, is everybody has a hand of these monster cards, and you're going to take turns playing cards into this shape. So you're going to match the shape with cards, and you're playing them cumulatively. When the shape is made on the table, that is the shape of monsters that you need to place on your room, exactly the way it's oriented for you. So Mandy, if you're sitting at one side of the table and I'm on the other, the exact same shape will likely have a different orientation when placed on our board because of that positional element. It's also really interesting that we cumulatively build up the shape. So let's just say it's a real simple 4 in a row. Well, I play the first card. Well, I'm building up mummies, so I'm going to put a mummy here. But you're building up vampires, so then you put a vampire down. Wait a minute, rude. Well, then I have to make a decision. Can I make this shape work with a mummy and a vampire? Should I go vampire so I can build up some vampire strength on my board, or should I try to force mummies and get them back? And where is this going to fit on my board? That collective shape building in a competitive game is actually really, really interesting. And can make it hard to plan ahead. So it's a very tactical game as opposed to being highly strategic on that front. So everybody draws their shape. The shape deck is seated with these little clock cards. When a clock card comes up, you get to score one of the 3 ways that you can score, whether it's monsters in front of the window or the largest grouping of a specific type of monster or diversity of monsters in an area, that kind of thing.
Right.
That's the game. Flip a shape card, fill the shape, put the shape on your board. There are a couple special abilities that, one-time use special abilities that let you mitigate a little bit of the frustration around that. And there is an advanced game side of the board, so you're going to get this dry erase board, and one side is pretty standard square room. The other side has a fancier shape room with other icons on it and things like that you have to work around. You can exceed the room, so the illustration shows a moat around the room, so sometimes you'll have to or want to put your shape so some monsters end up in the moat. Those monsters are negative points, which I call to mind because all that said about Castle Party, it's actually really challenging.
Oh, wow.
And you're going to drown a lot of monsters. Now, maybe you won't, but I certainly have been. And that's just part of the game. But I actually, after I played it the first time, the next time I taught the game, I was like, okay, be prepared.
Yeah.
Like, you can score negative points. Your score can be in the negative at the end of the game because all of your little monsters floating in the moat. Just heads up on that. But I like this game. It is a solid entry into that Roll and Write universe. It's adorable. It's fun to kind of put yourself as like, I'm making a monster party, right? It's kind of sad when you toss monsters into the moat. It's even sadder when you're counting the negative points for those monsters.
Aww.
But I like the way that you can plan out the scoring. I like the uniqueness of that collective shape building. And I think it's a lot of fun. So that is Castle Party.
The whole time you were talking about this, all I could think of was, he did the mash, the monster mash. Oh.
That is the perfect song. That is absolutely a must-have on the background track if you are playing this game 100%.
It sounds very cute. I remember you talking about it, and I think it's one that I'm definitely going to have to take a look at. I mean, I love Halloween, I love monsters, and it just sounds adorable. And it's flipping right, but I'm here for it. So definitely one I want to try.
Yes, and I actually was thinking of you a little bit when I was playing it a couple of times because it did feel like a game you would enjoy. So there you have it, folks. Some games that we've been playing. Mandy, you want to serve up some pie?
I do. Brought to you by TheOp.games, also known as USAopoly. Today's featured game is Hues and Cues. Recent Dice Tower Party Game of the Year winner, Hues and Cues, is a must-add to your shelf. To play, pick a color, give a clue, and everyone guesses a color on the board. For example, what color do you think of when I say apple? Would you pick a bright red apple or maybe a green apple? Everyone sees color differently, making this game so unique. The closer the guesses are to the target, the more points you earn. Available now at TheOp.games or your local game store today. Exclusive for Dice Tower listeners, 10% off your entire purchase at TheOp.games. Use promo code DICETOWER. This is available for all games, puzzles, and accessories for U.S. residents only. Free shipping available on purchases of $49 or more.
Order up!
And now, it's time to order up a slice of game pie.
So everybody, get ready for the Wild Wild West. That was like my Will Smith Wild Wild West. I couldn't do the rap after that because I forgot about it, but there you go. Game set in the American West.
I appreciate the scratching there. Very thematic for the Old West. The Wild West. You know, record scratching, Wild West. Okay.
I mean, hey, I just, that had nothing to do with the Wild West, but that version of song that I chose seemed appropriate.
Oh, and that movie was a piece of work, too.
It was
My goodness.
Something. So I figured this might be a spicy pie.
So yeah, we decided that it would be interesting to take a look at games set in the American West, or the Wild West, as it were. And, honestly, the first thing Mandy and I talked about was, do we want to do that? Because, quite frankly, a lot of games set in the Wild West are thematically problematic, whether they are appropriative or disrespectful or kind of outright racist. They can have a few problems.
A little touchy.
But the fact is, the American West is a great setting for games. And, Mandy and I, we're pretty attuned to some of the cultural issues in gaming and games. And one of the things I think that you and I both say a lot is that you can like problematic things. Nothing is perfect. It's just acknowledging that and asking for better as you move on.
Absolutely.
And, if people actually listen to Two Truths and a Lie, which I know you all do because I get messages about it all the time, you'll know I actually spent the summer at a dude ranch and was, rode barrels and was in rodeo and just had a great time. And I'm kind of fond of that era for those reasons. So Wild West, why not? Let's bring it. So, Mandy, you want to start us off with your first Wild West piece of pie?
I will. My mother's very excited. She was a big fan of like Clint Eastwood and, those movies. I think he did a lot of those kind of like Western movies and stuff. So this is going to be very interesting. She's like, oh, I want to hear what you're going to talk about. So my first slice of pie, well, of course, I have to pick the slice of pie that is a good game, but I do have concerns about some parts of it. So Lewis and Clark. So there are two, I think, types of this game. There's one called Discoveries, which I think is more
right. Discoveries is more of the lighter dice game. Yeah.
Yeah. This is not the one. I'm talking about the original one. It's a card game and, traveling up the board, like, in the real situation, in the real life of what happened with Lewis and Clark. And you're traveling and you have a set of cards. Everyone has the same set of cards that you're using to do these actions. So this is a game where the game is fantastic. However, there's a big however here. So remember, Suzanne was telling you, there are some things that, we kind of draw attention to in this kind of era because, there were some tendencies that were not good, whether it be racist or just, inappropriate. And this would be one of those games where they chose to reflect it in an appropriate way, in my opinion. So game mechanics, wonderful. Could they have done a better job representing maybe some of the people in the history? Absolutely. And this was a game that I believe was reprinted and those things did not change. So this is a weird one on the list, just to kind of let you know, great game. And this is a plea. If they're listening, please change the things. But this is one of those ones we were talking about where the game itself is good, but they maybe should have paid a little closer attention to some of the nuances in history in the game. So that's Lewis and Clark.
Indeed. First up for me, Gold West. Gold West is more of a Euro quote unquote style game that's largely mechanical, set in this thematically set in the West with mining copper and silver and gold and having tents out there. But really, this is a lot of resource management. And you get like stagecoaches. There's a stagecoach track. And it's got a Mancala management track as well that I just totally love. Gold West is a fabulous game with the trappings and dressings of kind of that Old West setting. Now, this is published by Tasty Minstrel Games that you may have heard from Tom is going through their own little struggles. I really hope that Gold West can find life beyond any current problems it has, because it's a really great game designed by J. Alex Cavern and definitely one worth checking out.
Absolutely. It's funny, we were talking about it, and I didn't think I'd played it. I'm like, oh, wait, I have played this game. It was so long. We played it during like a lunch hour, and I remember really enjoying it, so really good choice there. Another one on my list, another fun slice of pie, is Dice Town. So I have to tell you, just looking at this game, I was like, I don't know, this doesn't really look like my type of game, because it has that kind of cartoonish cover, and I'm like, it looks like a party game. I don't know, this doesn't look like my thing. And I got to tell you, it was really fun. You get to roll some dice. You get to, and it's been a while since I've played it, everybody, so please bear with my really terrible explanation. But I just love the different things you could do with the dice, and then you have different areas of the board. You can get things to own certain things, or get certain abilities, or have things that can affect other players' abilities. And it's a fairly simple game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But still really fun. And I was shocked at how much fun I had with it. So if you haven't tried Dice Town, don't dismiss it like I did at first because of the art. Once you actually get to the heart of it, it's actually quite a fun game. So Dice Town for me was a really good one.
I love Dice Town, and it's got that poker element, right? As you're rolling the dice that I really enjoy.
Exactly.
Next slice up for me, Wyatt Earp by the fabulous Mike Fitzgerald. Arguably, this is part of the Mystery Rummy family of games, even though it's not a mystery. It's more just the setting in which there are outlaws that you're trying to capture through card play. And it really is, quote unquote, just rummy. If you have cards that match one of the outlaws, you can play them down in a certain number of sets. But Mike adds little twists and turns, like the number of the number of cards that you put down will determine how much money goes onto the character. And then as you finish up the game, there's this kind of area majority or control over each of the outlaw. Well, who had the most strength in capturing them, and then how you split the pot and trying to earn those funds. There are cards with special abilities. There are sheriff cards. You can mess with your opponent's hands and what they've played out. Wyatt Earp is a fabulous, fun game set in the Wild West, and it's rummy. It never ceases to impress me. Wyatt Earp.
Right. I feel like I haven't even heard of this game. I mean, I know who Wyatt Earp is, but is this an older game?
It actually is older. It's actually 20 years old now.
Wow. Maybe. Okay.
Yeah. Wow. That kind of has blown my mind too.
That's amazing. Well, I feel like I need to check it out just for that reason alone. That it wasn't on my radar. So okay, Wyatt Earp.
Maybe I would actually really recommend this one, and your mom might like this one actually.
Oh, okay, definitely. Because Wyatt Earp. I mean, I know as soon as I say the name, she'll be like, "Ooh, yeah, let's try it." So now I'm really curious.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, the next one on my list, actually, this is a game that Suzanne and I played early on in getting to know each other, and that is Whistle Stop. Do you remember that game?
Well, I know Whistle Stop. I love Whistle Stop.
Oh, everybody.
If you're asking if I remember playing with you.
Oh, it was bad. Oh. I was so excited because I thought, oh, I'm going to win. Yes. And then all of a sudden those end game points started happening. I'm like, yeah, I just lost badly. So that's how I figured out how Suzanne played. But Whistle Stop.
Uh-oh.
And this is a game from Bezier. And it's literally... That's my train. It's really bad.
That was not a train noise, Mandy. I'm so sorry, but no, sweetie. I mean, unless we're talking like Thomas the Train.
Okay, it sounded much better in my head, but you all can close your eyes and just pretend it was a really big train.
Pretend real hard.
in Whistle Stop, you are laying out tiles and everybody has their own personal trains. You're trying to get them across the board to different area of the boards to kind of fulfill certain things that you'll see on the side of the board. There's different kinds of contracts, things that give you more benefits in the game. I mean, all in all, trying to complete your best kind of long line of trains. This is a fun game. I really like this. I played it a lot when it first came out. American West, I mean, the colors of the game didn't make me feel that way because it was very pastel.
Not at all.
No,
Yeah.
but it definitely was in that kind of time frame. So Whistle Stop, even tried it. It's a fun one. I definitely think you should give it a whirl.
I love Whistle Stop. Great choice. For me, next up, and I kind of feel bad bringing this game up because I talk about it almost every chance I can, but that's how much I like the game, and that's Longhorn. This is a 2-player game, really small box, in which you play competing cattle rustlers.
Okay.
But really, it's pretty mechanical, in which you've got a bunch of different colored cow meeples on the board, and you will pick up cows of a color, and then that determines how far you can move your token for future moves and set up your opponent for failure, for success. And the scoring is really, really great because your cows are going to be worth the number of cows that are left on the board. So you're trying to find this really nice balance and watching what your opponent is doing. Longhorn is such a great 2-player game. And it's got amazing art from Vincent Dutray.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Yeah. So Longhorn.
Another one I've heard you that one I've heard you talk about before.
Yeah. I know,
But that's
true.
good. I mean, it's really good. Well,
Okay, we got to talk, Mandy.
we all know. We talk about Game Pie, and we all know there's a play on the word because it's like 3-ish games, 3.14. Well, I am invoking the 0.14 right now. So.
Okay. All right. You get a pass.
All right, so
from me. We'll see what the listeners say.
My 0.14 is Firefly. Now, hear me out. Hear me out.
Boy.
Hear me out. So, Firefly, I mean, yeah, it kind of was like space, but they were kind of like space cowboys. So it kind of had that
Yes.
Western theme, but it was like space-ish kind of, or not even space, but like, well, no, it would be space. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like it could like a smidgen count toward this. And I know I've mentioned Firefly before. This game is so good. I mean, I also enjoy the show, right? So for me, it really immersed in it, but it's a huge game. It is definitely one of those games where, you know, it takes up like 2 very large tables just for the cards and money and then for the actual board. But it's like the show. You're traversing, you know, through the planets and trying to fulfill contracts, very much like the actual show. So if you are not familiar with the show, it doesn't mean you can't play the game. I think you would still enjoy it. But just definitely having that makes you kind of like, oh, I remember that in the show, or I remember this character did this, but you would still enjoy it either way. So that's my cheat, but I still think it fits this theme, Firefly.
And just, I mean, it does have spaceships
And
in space. But we know you don't like space games, so.
right, it just has that cowboy-esque theme to it.
Cowboy-esque. Game set in the American West, not cowboy-esque. Oh my goodness. All right, we got to close this up before we get into an argument. The last slice of today's American West
All right.
Game Pie. Homesteaders. Homesteaders is one of these games. It's an auction game where you're trying to bid for different buildings that you get to put in your personal little town. They play off of each other. There's a lot of resource management. The bits in the game are great. The resource management in the game is great. The way that, I mean, honestly, everything in Homesteaders just comes together beautifully. I love this game. I think it's a beautiful production. And I know that they kickstarted an edition of it, like a reprint of it a little bit ago. But again, this is Tasty Minstrel Games. I really hope that Homesteaders continues to live on. If you have not had a chance to try this one, it's a little meatier. It definitely has a little kind of, it's weighted 3.04 on Board Game Geek for complexity. Totally worthwhile experience. Fabulous auction and tableau building game set in the Wild West. There are no spaceships in this one, though. Sorry, folks.
Darn, not as imaginative, I guess. That's all right.
Oh, okay. And on that note,
Exactly.
we'll call that an episode, I think, folks. Wah, wah, wah. Thank you, as always, for joining us. We will take your questions. We definitely have a few building up. No big deal. We'll get to you if we haven't responded directly. We'll circle back or or put it in the show. You can reach me at Suzanne at Dicetower.com.
And yes, same thing as Suzanne said. I've seen your emails. We will get to them. You can reach me at Mandi. That's Mandi with an I at Dicetower.com.
I feel like I should spell my name because Kenny, right? The Dice Tower's Kenny, who, again, nicest guy in the whole world.
Yeah.
He gets all the emails that go to misdirected email addresses.
Right.
And I get a couple a week where it's like, oh, I think this person spelled your name wrong. So I'm going to spell my name Suzanne. Suzanne at Dicetower.com. I don't have anything pithy like Suzanne with a Z.
But it actually has a rhyme because you're like well, I say Z, but you say Z. The Z actually works better. Suzanne. Suzanne. I don't know. It just has a thing. So we're going to come up with a little jingle for you.
Okay. As always, it is a pleasure and privilege to be part of your extended gaming family. Thank you so much for listening to our episode of the podcast. Even though Mandi and I got into a little tiff, I think our friendship will survive.
Agreed.
And next episode, Tom and Eric will be back to bicker about and banter about games with you. They're going to go urban with their top 10 city games in episode 722.
Nice.
So until our next episode, I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Mandi Hutchinson.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassal Memorial Fund is an organization dedicated to helping gamers in need. Learn more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassal.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Suzanne, Mandi, and Eric with assistance from Roy Canaday and Rob Searing. Our theme is composed by Timothy Pinkham and arranged by Matt Bellier. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at podcast@Dicetower.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network at Dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. All right, everyone, it's that time again. 2 truths and a lie, so I'll read mine from the last episode. Here we go. The reality shows I have watched are The Circle, Don't Be Tardy for the Wedding, and Project Runway. If you said Don't Be Tardy for the Wedding as the lie, you would be correct. I'm not even going to lie. I did kind of watch Don't Be Tardy for the Party.
Oh my god. Okay.
Yeah, that was where I had to draw the line. How about you, Suzanne?
I'm just gonna move on and not judge. Last episode I said I've watched all of WandaVision, all of The Falcon and Winter Soldier, and all of Loki, and the lie is that I've watched all of Falcon and Winter Soldier. I just haven't gotten around to it. I will.
Yeah, because I've watched them all, and yes, very good. So I'm curious to hear what you think. All right, new this week, here we go. I think we are on a Kickstarter roll, so you get to, this should be fun. I'd be curious to see how people do with this one. I backed Role Player Adventures, I backed So You've Been Eaten, and I backed Pulp Invasion.
And for me, I backed Ankh, I backed Above and Below, and I backed Seventh Continent.
Ooh, some good stuff there, everybody. Good luck.